Hi, I'm Matt,
And I'm Cari.
and we've been married for 17 years. And as most marriages go, there's the goods and the bads, and we hope the goods outweigh the bads. But we had a really rough patch in our life a couple of years ago. Uh, I had a heart attack at 41, and it was pretty life changing in the sense of coming home after a heart attack and trying to figure out what this life was all about. And instead of turning, say, to God or to the Bible, I turned to alcohol a lot more than I had in the past. And got into a really deep, dark place, spiraled out of control and just a deep, dark depression, something I can't really put into words as much as even today, I can't put into words what I was feeling at that present moment. Just darkness, lack of joy, lack of passion, stressed, overwhelmed, felt like a different person. That I didn't even really want to be here, and to know that I had a second chance at life to try to equate those two as making sense together didn't. And so I turned to alcohol, turned to a lot of ignoring the family, isolating, and it just got really, really rough. And the night before Easter of 2019, I had been drinking a lot. I had been taking pills that I had for some conditions, and woke up in jail the next morning and found out that I had hurt my wife in front of my kids, and didn't really know exactly what happened. So we had a lot to work through from that point of just even fathoming a cement floor early in the morning, doing breathalyzer tests and wondering why you're there. Yeah, it was pretty rough. I remember in jail walking into a room and there were people arguing and fighting and yelling at each other, and people are yelling at me because I'm crying. And I sat down in this chair, and it wasn't even where I was supposed to be at the time. They're telling you go back to your room. And I just sat down and had no feeling whatsoever. And at that specific moment when I felt like everything was lost, everything in my entire world, my daughters, my wife, my career, every aspect of what I thought at that specific moment was the most important stuff in the world, and some of it was completely gone, and I didn't know what was going to happen from that point. Desperation beyond desperation, drowning it felt. And then in that moment, as clear as if I were to do it to you physically with a blanket, I felt this warmth and this comfort and this peace like I've never, ever felt before, in a time when I shouldn't be feeling any of that. When I should feel the most desperate, I felt the most hope. I felt this peace and this joy, almost when you hear people talk about their death and they go to a place of euphoria almost. And it was this moment that everything was going to be okay. And I knew it was beyond me, and I knew it wasn't me, and it wasn't my thought process, and it wasn't my surroundings, obviously. And I couldn't have called it God at that specific moment, but in retrospect, that was the moment that I really met God. And God was there, and that peace and that warmth and that feeling of some sort of hope that this is going to be okay. In that moment, that little seed, I knew it was something beyond me. And that night, while I was laying in jail, in a bed, with a kid above me who stole a bike, and he's crying and he's yelling, and I remember looking over and I saw blood on my bed sheet and thinking, this is just, what is going on? And I was crying and I was trying to fall asleep. And I remember rolling around in bed, and I felt like, once again, as if you were to take me and throw me in the ocean, it was that real. And I felt like I was splashing in the waves, and I kept reaching up, and I kept reaching, and I'm half asleep, half awake, so it wasn't a dream state, but I was reaching up and I was trying to grab pieces of wood and debris, and I can see above the water every so often, and I kept seeing this hand, and this hand was reaching down to me, and I kept grabbing for all of the other stuff. And I was grabbing wood, and I remember grabbing like floating books and things that were just floating in the water. And finally, after going under so many times, I reached up and I grabbed the hand, and I remember feeling peace at that moment. And then I remember waking up the next morning and there was this new bit about me. And then, as it went on, I remember thinking that moments of judgment of how I could stand here and I could look at all these different people that were in jail, but judgment had disappeared that morning when I woke up. And I remember going downstairs and I was sitting with a guy who had built cabinets, and I sat with another guy who was homeless, and I sat with the kid who stole the bike, and we all sat at this table together, and they were talking about their families and their life, and they were telling me that everything was going to be okay, and how this homeless guy said he was praying for me because he saw me crying the day before. And these moments of humanity, it felt that God had put these people in my life specifically. Nothing was by chance anymore. Every moment that I felt that there was some sort of reason for that happening. In this time of desperation, sitting at a table eating the most foul breakfast I've ever had, passing it on to whoever else wanted it, but sitting there with these people and realizing that it's gonna be okay. I don't know why, I didn't at the time, but now looking back in retrospect, God was there. God was right there with me. And that was the start of it.
So during that time, we were apart, and we didn't get to talk. And what was going on in my life with the girls was confusing, really tough. Being on the outside, also knowing what you were going through, judgment on our whole family, and it was just a really rough time trying to explain the girls, trying to sort through everything. It was a tough time.
So coming out of jail wasn't exactly freedom at that point. It wasn't the feeling of, great, now this is all over. It was just the beginning. Had about 1,000 text messages and voicemails, people wondering what the heck I did, and it was very public what happened, and so I had a lot of breakdowns in public places, in the sense that I just felt this judgment, this strong judgment, this rawness, and trying to handle it myself, whatever that meant at the time. When it came to, say, ego or what do people think of me, always made things worse. It always just escalated the fear and the doubt that everything would be okay.
There was a lot of unknowns, a lot. It was just kind of a big unknown, but yet there was a underlying feeling of it'll be okay. All of this happened for a reason. God is constantly there doing some amazing things, and sometimes not so amazing, but those things are stepping stones to what's going to happen. So
through all the times of not seeing my daughters, not seeing my wife, not having my job anymore, I was fired, a lot of the community stuff that I was doing, I had lost that, and all of these things that were going on were the deepest, darkest places I could have been, but I was taken out of that, and I was taken out of those moments, and I remember thinking that as long as I'm present with God, I can do this, and I don't have to be alone through this process. And my time when I felt the most alone in my entire life was a time I felt not alone at all. But as time went on, continued just to be strong in my faith, had a lot of amazing people around me. And I know God put these people in my life. Bo, he brought me to church. There was a message that day that spoke to my heart beyond anything had before. Just from that point, being taken in and comforted and prayed for and accepted by Crossroads Church, and meeting Beth and meeting Sean and meeting with Sean every single week and having a cup of coffee and sitting down with him and being able to ask these questions or speak about the things that have happened and getting some sort of understanding and how the pieces just kind of came together. And that was even more of a relationship builder. Then I wanted to learn more. Then I wanted to read more. Then I wanted to, dive into the Bible. And any question I had the resources to be able to get some things answered. And this connection just happened between the people that I was meeting and with God. Something I remember everybody saying that had faith, that believed in God. Not only were they very forgiving, which was an appeal when everybody was against you, it felt like, but I noticed that was the common thread. Was this true forgiveness, lack of judgment, love that came regardless, and that was really appealing to me. And I started searching those people out, and I found out that the majority of those people all had really strong faith. And I think that encouraged me to kind of explore a little more into, what is this? I remember a lot of people saying, it's on God's time. Because 5 months had passed by before we actually got to see each other. I got to see the girls, I got to see Cari, got to just be back with my family. 5 months when you're tucking your girls in every single night at bedtime. I know, it was what I would now look back on without God and say that was impossible. That'd be impossible. That'd be my hell. And it was. There were times when it was the hardest thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. But there was this depth of hope that you can't really explain with words. It was there. And when people would say, it's on God's timeline, it's not yours. It's His timeline. I heard it so much, and at times I get frustrated. Like, no, you don't get it. No, I need to see my girls. Like, no, it's on God's timeline. You just got to accept it. And after being frustrated by the reality of that, it all sunk in and it all made sense. And later I heard a story too of a little kid who was watching a butterfly struggle in a cocoon, and he went to the cocoon and cut it open just to try to help the butterfly get out. The butterfly came out, fell to the ground and died. And the butterfly wasn't strong enough to fly yet, but the kid was just trying to help. There was going to be no one that could cut open my cocoon. I needed to grow. And I knew that the time that was passing was hard, and I knew that not being with my family was hard. But that hope, that feeling of, this is God's timeline, and I'm not going to fight it, and I'm not going to argue with it. It changed, but I always had to go back to remembering that. And there's that constant part of you that's going to be talking and saying, no, wait, no, this is not how it's supposed to be. It's not fair. It's not this. It's not. God's got it under control. Yeah, and so 5 months passed by, and we did get to see each other again.
Yeah, and that was pretty amazing. It was awkward and weird, and I don't even know. You can't even put it in words, really. Scary, strange, because of the reaction of the girls, and we had a therapist in there with us, and it was so amazing to see you, and then it's been amazing since then to see the growth from both of us, or all of us, how much we've grown and how much that experience did to us as a family.
As much as it was the worst thing I could have ever imagined in my life, if I were to write it out and someone were to say, write out the worst thing that you could possibly do, other than death. I mean, of my family or something like that. Just to know that you caused that much pain to so many people in your life that you loved. But then for something this amazing to come from it, it doesn't make sense. It's God. That's the stuff that I've realized, is that if it's not making sense most of the time, it's God. It's not crazy. It's not weird. It's not coincidence. It's God at work. And us seeing that and watching the transformation and continue to grow as a family, to watch our girls continue to grow in their faith and the people that they're meeting and what they're inspired by and what they're hearing in church, and just watching that unfold naturally as a authentic way of these girls learning and seeing the power of God and what can happen in a situation that probably should have completely fallen apart and probably should have just burned to the ground and been over with, is now stronger than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our entire family, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that any just counseling alone or any alcohol treatment, as I've been sober now for over 2.5 years, but it's not just that. All that stuff's nice, but it doesn't last forever without God. It just doesn't. It's a supplement for true happiness. I think that we've all been able to realize that if we want something that's real and we want something that's authentic and we want to have true hope and continue going down the path for our family, the only way to do that is with God. And it makes a lot of sense when you see it. It makes a lot of sense when you see your family and the impossible become possible, when the rejection that you thought you'd get from your kids, and you got it at first, lack of trust, but to be able to build into the person that you couldn't even imagine that you would become, you can't do that on your own. And we haven't done that on our own at all. And I'm sure we could have for a month or two until things would just fall apart again. There was no real foundation other than, whatever we made our foundation be at that moment. But to be able to lean on constant trust and faith and constant trust that God's got our back through everything, it just inspires you to just want to continue
and get better and constantly grow.